Hello. The following is an interview I had with Chauncey Parchment. He is a dear friend and mentor, and one of the few teachers who I take class with regularly. He is currently teaching full-time here in Brooklyn at a number of yoga studios, including Baby Cobra, where he will be co-hosting a teacher training this winter. For more information, there will be a link below. Additionally, there will be a link to his website where you can take some of his courses virtually. I highly recommend you check it out. A lot of improvements were made to increase the quality of this episode. However, like always, this is a learning experience, and unfortunately, some of the footage was lost due to overheating. More improvements will continue to be made to increase the quality of these episodes. Regardless, I hope you're still able to enjoy listening to our conversation.
Hi, my name is Chauncey Parchment, and I teach at SkyTing, Yoga Tribe Brooklyn, Aloe Yoga, Baby Cobra, Shapeshifter Studios, and Premier Yoga right now. I've been practicing yoga for 8.5 years now, almost 9 years. Yeah,
Wow.
I know, it's weird.
That's how long you've been teaching or practicing?
Practicing for about 8.5 years. So 2023 now, yeah, eight years, 8.5 years, about that.
And when in your life's journey did you kind of discover like yoga as a path to explore?
Well, I started getting into yoga in 2014. I'd say about 2014 is when I started taking class consistently. I was probably like 19, about then, 19, 20.
How did you hear about that studio?
When I was in high school, I had a girlfriend at the time. We were both dancers, and she brought me to yoga. And so I remember the space from then. Um, And yeah, I decided to go take a class. And that's how I found myself at St. Mark's,
What were your first
you
impressions?
know. But when I first took yoga in high school at St. Mark's Yoga to the People, I didn't like it at all, really. I thought I was kind of I didn't
What
care.
didn't you like?
Well, I approached it with like a dancer mentality. So I was like, oh, this is gonna be like physically challenging in some way, or like kind of like you know, push my movement, push my coordination. But it didn't do that for me at that time. So I didn't think it was really much there.
What kept you going back, her?
We went once, maybe twice. We went when I was like 16, you know, 17. Then I didn't go for like 2, 3 years. And I came back again when I was like 19. And I went by myself.
Why'd you go back?
Well, I was just kind of I had quit dance. I had quit dance. I had quit theater. I used to dance and used to act for many years. That was my, main profession. That was what I was doing. I was dancing and acting. But I stopped doing theater, stopped dancing. So I just didn't really know where I wanted to go and what I wanted to do next. I was in a kind of a gray area in my life, and yeah, man, I needed something to just kind of like shift the way I felt about myself, about my life. I was a little depressed at that time.
So like suddenly yoga became more appealing as a way to do that.
Yeah, and I didn't have any money too. I had like maybe $10, and that space was donation based. And then my Moon's Falafels was like next door to it. And that was like $3 for a falafel at the time, or $4 for a falafel at that
Yeah.
time. So it was perfect, And I had a friend of mine too, actually, who I would link up occasionally with, and he would come with me to take yoga and stuff. But that was really my thing, I was really like diving into taking class, and I would write music. I was writing music at the time too. Write music, take class, come back, reflect on what I wrote, started getting into herbal teas, started getting into Rastafarianism, started getting into herbalism, getting into Ital living, eating good, you know, um, reading health books. Um,
Were you interested in the yoga philosophy at this time, or are you just practicing asana?
well, in the very, very beginning, it was just all about feeling better, mentally better. That was the draw in the very beginning. It was when I do this practice, I feel better. I feel lighter mentally. I feel different. And that kept me going back. That was really the most important thing. Then I got into philosophy in general. Outside of yoga philosophy, I just got started getting into philosophers in general, different spiritual teachers. Started to read their books and their stories, and so I was getting into spirituality. I was getting into philosophy, but I was practicing asana, in yoga. But I was reading other Indian spiritual teachers who weren't necessarily yogis, like the man named Jiddu Krishnamurti. He's not a yogi per se. I mean, but some call him a Raja yogi though, but he's not really a yogi.
What does he teach?
He's a spiritual philosopher, teacher. He has a number of books and lectures. He hasn't written any books. All his books are transcribes of lectures he's done, and people they write it down for and keep it up. Um, he was a member of this society called the Theosophical Society, which is like embracing all world religions, embracing trying to unite man under one nucleus is what their like mission statement would be basically. So he kind of grew up in this spiritual society, and but he left, he disbanded it, he left. He was supposed to become their like leader, the world's teacher, which he was prophesized to be, but he left, started his own thing, traveling the world, giving lectures, giving tours and lectures, and yeah, he became a really powerful speaker. So I gravitated towards him in the beginning. He was one of my first like um spiritual teachers, so to speak, somebody who kind of opened up my mind.
Yeah, sounds like this was a very big turning point in your life, this time period.
Yeah, 19, 20. That was an interesting year for me. I was working at a spot called where was I working at that time? I was working at this I had so many different jobs at that time. I did so many different things. I was I was interesting. Yeah, right before that, right before I started to really get into yoga heavy, I was really getting into Rastafarianism though. See that came first. Like that kind of came before yoga. Heavy was I had a friend of mine who was a producer, and he was deep into music, and he sent me. I had an iPad too.
Was this when you started DJing?
This is like 18, 19, so I just finished high school. I had a girlfriend in high school, and we broke up terribly, and that went down the drain, and stopped dancing and stopped doing theater, and kind of lost touch with the friend group, so I was just kind of going through a transition
Hmm.
and not really sure what was the next thing. And but I had music though. I had a 10 box set of Billie Holiday.
Music's
He
always there for you in the
yeah,
lows.
yeah. He put a 10 box set on my iPad. And then I had a two-part album of Bob Marley. It's called Songs of Freedom. Two-part album. And then I had another album that's not an official album really. You can only find this album on YouTube. It's not on any other platform. It's called Selassie's Chapel.
Huh.
And that's like a 1968 to 1971, something like that. The recordings of Bob. And I also had a compilation of Nigerian high life music and Afro funk from the 1970s as well. So like this was new music for me. This was like, getting into Bob's type of sound, the reggae sound, but coming from Bob at a time when he was kind of growing up into Rastafarianism himself, so he was also formulating his values and viewpoints on the world through his music and he was spearheading the Rastafarian movement. And then you had in Nigeria, high life and Afro funk and Fela Kuti. Same time period, but different parts of the world. Um, it's just all revolutionary music. It's all like rebellion music. It's all soul rebel music. So it was like, for me at that time, it was really good to have that, in my ear. Um, yeah, I was working at this warehouse space, and Bob was a construction worker when he was in his like teens, early 20s, in Detroit. So I felt like Bob, like I was, going to my little warehouse job, working the forklift and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And working hard, working all day, working all night. Um, yeah, it was an interesting time for me. But it just gave me the soundtrack I needed to formulate the type of life I wanted, type of person I wanted to be.
What were some of those revelations?
Well, militants was one of them. I really, I became a lot more militant in my views with politics and economics and you know,
In what sense?
I never really supported politics too much, and listening to Bob's story and Fela Kuti's story, they were directly connected and influenced by politics. They influenced politics heavy with their music and what they did outside of music. Bob and Fela, particularly, actually, his mother got almost murdered by government officials. They raided his camp. He had like a compound with all his artists, family, and they raided it. Threw his mom off a two-story building.
What?
hmm
Wow.
So Fela really was deeply direct. All his music, you know, Power Show, and that's a song by him. He calls, military people zombies. He has all these different wordplay where he's exposing the corruption within government, and then he had a direct experience with that corruption. Bob is in Jamaica working with the JLP, the PNP, two local political parties in Jamaica at that time. Have friends on both sides, and he's in the middle. And he's trying to make peace through music. Famous concert he had, he brought the leader of the PNP, the leader of the JLP on stage, had them hold hands, and he's singing with them both, you know. So these artists, were political guys, even though they were musicians, and they had a big influence on their country, and you hear it in their music, So hearing Bob's music, songs like Soul Rebel, songs like Slave Driver, you cannot listen to these songs if, especially, being young and from Brooklyn, being in the ghetto, like you can't not hear these songs and not think about your circumstances and not think about who were you in this context, like so for me it really, it inspired me. It made me say, okay, like I experienced corruption in my neighborhood.
What did that look like?
They had stop and frisk. That was a big thing growing up, stop and frisk. So this is I think under Obama, the stop and frisk thing. So basically what that means is officer can see you anywhere, anytime. If they have probable cause, they can stop you. and they can search you. You know, they ask you any questions, they search you. So I experienced that number of times. I experienced coming home, uh, 14, coming home from rehearsal, either doing a play or doing dance.
They just stop you in the street.
On my block. I'm like maybe 40 steps from my house, and they creep they creep on you, crack the window, and they creep on you. Where you going? What do you mean where I'm going? Where you coming from? What does it matter to you where I'm coming from? Like harassing you, you
Yeah.
know. So we experienced this a number of times, in different ways. So it was interesting. It was good to hear artists who are successful, who didn't compromise, their values for success, and instead their values is what made them successful. That's why people love them. You know, so listening to these guys really helped at that time to get me into a different space with how I viewed the world and how I wanted to approach life, you know, what I wanted to do, kind of person I wanted to be. So, yeah, that's what happened. I became more militant, I became a little bit more focused. I became more healthy. Being healthy was the most important thing, I felt like, at that time. I started to get into, there's a book I read called The Body Ecology Diet by a woman named Donna Gates. That was like the first like health book I ever read,
Hmm.
talking about candida, talking about
Before this, you was kind of never on your radar.
yeah, I never put it into scope, it was never like on my mind to eat healthier. I was just like, oh,
What was your
you eat
diet
what you
back
eat,
then?
well, my mom fed me, so my mom was a good cook, she made good food, and she's not the most unhealthy person. I had like oxtails, and we're a Spanish West Indian African American home, so we would have like
A lot of flavor in there.
yellow rice and curry shrimp and curry chicken and oxtail and
Wow.
fried chicken and baked chicken and all different. I was never a pork chop person. I never liked pork chops.
Hmm.
I never liked hamburgers. Wasn't
Hmm.
my thing. But I love ribs though. I used to bust down ribs like crazy. Used to bust down fried chicken like crazy. Like growing up, grits and sugar and cheese and all kind of,
Yeah.
bacon and so I like any other average, you know, New York kid, I was kind of me. It wasn't nothing too crazy. I didn't eat fast food a lot, but I did.
Doesn't sound too bad.
It wasn't too bad, but I had my moments of being extremely unhealthy. I was a bowl of cereal kid, like once a day. I like need to have a bowl of cereal. I like love cereal,
What cereal?
bro. I don't know, like cinnamon toast crunch,
I didn't know you had the Oreo cereal.
Oreo cereal, bro. Honey Nut Cheerios, man. Cookie Crisp. I was a cereal kid.
So after ecology, how'd that all change?
Well, Body Ecology Diet was the first health book I had. So and a friend of mine gave me this book. A friend of mine named Julio, who was a year younger than me, but was already reading health books, was deeper into Rastafarianism, deeper into philosophies, and so it was good to have him as a friend to bounce energy off of. He gave me the Body Ecology Diet book. He was like, read Jiddu Krishnamurti, you know, and I shared with him Nigerian music, old, certain. He was already deep into Bob already, but I had that Selassie's Chapel album. Nobody really heard that album before. It's still a rare album to this day. So he was like, "Oh, what is this album?" So we just vibed, and he was already drinking herbal teas, drinking reishi, burdock, and dandelion and stuff like that, and I was getting into that. So when I was reading the book, he already read through the book. He was already kind of practicing some of the things in the book already, you know, like how to prepare a smoothie, what proper food combinations. You don't do high sugar fruits and low sugar fruits. You don't do fruits and vegetables. You're supposed to do low sugar fruits with vegetables if you're gonna do fruits and vegetables. And then but really ideally you do fruits by themselves, you do veggies by themselves. If you're gonna combine them, you do berries, low sugar fruits with the veggies, and that's the fruit veggie combination.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they stay separate.
Why is that?
She has an understanding where your stomach uses different enzymes to break down different foods, and it requires more enzymes to break down more complex food groups.
That
So
takes more energy.
you want to simplify your diet, so it's easier for you.
Hmm.
So that was one thing that was important to me. The rainbow spectrum, having different types of colors on your plate. That's also was important. Getting my squashes and, also what type of potatoes to eat. I was eating more red skin potatoes. I started to transition to red skin versus brown skin. There's a lower sugar in red skin potatoes, just higher, more nutritious red skin potatoes. Started to eat those more. Massaging my kale, staying from overly cooking things,
Hmm.
not cooking it too much, just a little, just a simmer, you
Yeah.
know.
I've
Um,
gotten really into the rare steaks lately.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, that used to be impossible for me because it's just like it can be really tough, but
Yeah, yeah.
when you figure out how to cook it just right,
Right, you can get it good. See.
melts in your mouth.
um, yeah. So that was some of the fermented foods. She was getting into those, the importance of having fermentation, in your diet, like fermented coconut meat, using culture starters, kombuchas, things like
Yeah.
this, getting into that. All these different ways of adding in probiotics, into your diet was coming from that book for me. So that was the first one. I found the herbal store called Dual Specialty, you know, um, East 5th and First Avenue is where it's at. So it's still there now, Indian herbal store. And they're not too far from St. Martin's. So I would like wander, we would hang out, wander, walk by, I'll pop my head into places. And I found this herbal store. And that's to start to get into all the herbs they have there. And Julio, my friend, already was shopping there. We were shopping there separately. And then found out that we were both shopping at the same herbal store, getting the herb because it was had the same packaging. It was like, oh, you gonna do? I gonna do it too. Oh, okay. And then he was like, yeah, I get the burdock, reishi, and dandelion combination. That was his thing. He was big on that with those three. And I was like, okay. So I started to do this, and then I started to add ginger in, and that was the herbal tea for a while.
How much of a transformation did you see physically at this time?
Well, I was always a pretty slim guy. I wasn't working out thin at all.
Did
So
you feel like your energy levels changed?
yeah, for me, I think everything inspired me. I think this is my first time really drinking large cups of tea on a daily basis. I was drinking Darjeeling, super Darjeeling tea on a daily basis, pu'er on a daily basis, Portiarco on a daily basis. I started to really drink
Wow,
teas,
covering a lot of bases
Yeah,
here.
I really was drinking my teas. And then also stopped what I was watching. Like I was only watching documentaries. At a certain point, I stopped watching stuff just to entertain me. And then I used to be, I used to watch. What did I watch? No, I stopped watching everything. I actually got rid of my TV. I had a TV in my room, and I got rid of that, and I just had my iPad, and I was just watching documentaries on my iPad when I wanted to watch something, and
Hmm.
I mean, I was doing yoga, I was eating better, drinking teas, eating less as well. But what I did notice, what was challenging was trying to cut out certain things permanently. So I was trying to, and that's what also kind of got me upset with myself because I was like, I should be better than this. Yeah, so that became interesting to me that I wasn't able to actually have control over what I wanted and what I didn't want, you know? Like I would be like, okay, cutting out meat wasn't a problem. That was easy. Cutting out red meat
Did
was
you go
fine.
vegan or vegetarian?
I cut out cheese, dairy, milk.
What were you eating? Just like all nuts and vegetables?
Um, I was doing my what am I what I was eating at the time. I was still eating Mahmoud's falafels, which wasn't the healthiest, but it was vegan. Um, I was going to I had a lot of money. I was going to a place called Vanessa's Dumpling. It was like a Chinese spot basically, and I would get veggie dumplings, scallion pancakes, um, stuff like that. But it wasn't the healthiest still. But it wasn't meat and it wasn't dairy. But the hardest thing to cut out for me in the beginning was white bread, actually. That was one of the hardest things to cut out my
You
diet for
felt
some reason.
yourself craving it?
Yeah, like I would want to get like a bagel, you know. I
Mm.
want to get a bagel, croissants.
The wheat gut is
Yeah,
real.
yeah, that white bread it was a hard thing to cut out for me for a while. I was like, I didn't realize I like bread so much. But eventually I kicked the bread too, got off the bread. That was hardcore. For like 3, 4 years, I was hardcore. No meat, no dairy, no bread in general, no white rice, no rice actually at all.
Did that feel empowering?
Yeah, it felt like I was onto something. I felt like I was moving in a different direction and I was opening new territory. Things were just starting to expand and I felt good about that. And I feel like I was still in the very beginning because then I was getting into the to water and what the quality of water I should be drinking.
Mm.
So I started looking at what water companies I should be purchasing water from. Where should I be getting my water from? How do I even go about purifying my water? So that became another rabbit hole to get into now. There's so many different things. And
How did it feel going through this journey in like one of the craziest cities in the world?
yeah, I
Because
mean,
these are very, I don't know, just earthly qualities that I don't think you really feel just walking around the streets.
it's true. I mean, I wasn't alone. It was me. I had my partner Azuri. She was raised plant-based by her
You
mom.
were going out at this time,
We started dating probably 20, yeah, 20, 21, you know.
and she was going through a similar journey, or was she
But she
ahead, or
was she was raised plant-based.
okay.
So she was already in this culture, she was raised in this culture by her mom. She already had a lot of tools, a lot of skills, a lot of knowledge and how to be holistic beyond just food, like the hair, making your own hair products, making your own moisturizers, making your
Wow.
own, she was really into the DIY holistic lifestyle as a whole,
And
you
how did
know,
you two meet?
you know. We met through a friend of mine of ours, who had a crush on her first, and he was looking to date her, and I was with a friend of mine named Jasper. We were making music at his house, and he brought her over to hang out. And, we hung out, all of us was hanging out, and I was kind of like making fun of her. I was just trying to like, because she was so beautiful, I was like, the only way is to make fun of you
What? What's that logic?
Only way I can be comfortable around you, I make fun of you because you're so beautiful.
Okay.
So I would crack jokes,
And this worked.
poke at her, crack jokes to
Flawless plan.
get a rise out of her. And my friend Joshua was like, "Yo, you don't like this girl?" Like, he was like, "So she not coming around no more?" Like, yeah. And I was like, I'm just playing with her. But I saw her again at a party. Timeline is messed up here. But how we started to really connect, I need a job at the time. And my friend Omar said, "My friend's job is hiring. You should go down, go for an interview." So I went in, had the interview, and I got the job. And I was working at this like health food store. It's called Feel Food. It was owned by this Argentinian man. He was a chef, and he opened up two restaurants, Old Cafe and Feel Food. Really good stuff, really good stuff. And he was doing like tapenade spreads and romesco spreads with like lima bean flour dough, and like he was lemon poppy dessert cakes and zucchini breads, and that store was good, because I started to get exposed to really delicious types of healthy food, with a Latin American touch, from a high quality chef.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh shit, okay. I get like really healthy desserts. I know what that tasting feels like. Zucchini bread was crack. Like it was absolutely crack. Like just remembering the flavors of it right now put such a smile on my face because it was
You don't
so,
have it anymore?
dude, I don't know. I was such a junkie for this bread that when we left the job, I like took the recipe book because I was like, I'm gonna make this bread. It was just unbelievable. So the first day at work,
That's amazing.
first day at work, she's working, and I'm like, oh shit, it's you. And uh then I switched up. I got really shy and like timid around her for some reason.
Mhm.
And I was like kind of like coy, and that went on for some time. And then eventually broke the ice, started talking and hanging out, and got more comfortable and asked her out. And first date was terrible. I was
How
shy,
so?
so awkward, so awkward. I was very intimidated by her. She looked very seasoned, very mature, and and then it didn't help that one of the guys at the job who was trying to talk to her was like this Portuguese ambassador who was like an MMA fighter who ran a children's school and all this amazing things, He like took her on a date, had Secret Service, and all this stuff.
What?
God, I was like, what's going on here? You
Damn.
know? Uh, and this is after our first date. We had a first date, and then he was already like trying to make moves on her too.
Yeah.
And he took her out, and she said, "Hey, Tulio asked me out." I said, "Oh, okay." And they went on a date, and she told me how the date was and everything like that. You know, so I just felt like she was out of my league a little bit,
Mm.
but she wasn't. We were actually a perfect match for each other. Um, so yeah, she helped a lot with cooking in the house and figuring out what type of, because before I met her, I was only dish I could make was red skin potatoes and kale and garlic and sea salt and olive oil. That was my meal.
Potatoes and kale?
Yeah, that was it.
That's all you were eating.
That's all I that's all I can make.
Thank God she came into your
Thank
life.
God. I couldn't make anything. So I was making, and Julio couldn't cook. Julio was gross. Julio would make the worst stuff, man. Julio's a funny guy. He was really into like Asian culture, and went to a spot called Pearl River. They sell all these like Chinese, Japanese, and Korean pottery and dishes and all this stuff. So he went down there and he bought like a steamer set like the old
These
out of the
steamed
old kung fu
dumplings,
movies, like the stack up, they stack up like
bamboo
two, yeah, they
steamers.
stack like he bought like two of those, three of those, right? She's in the house thinking he's in 1970s Shaw Brothers kung fu movie, Shaolin Fist, and he's like, at the fucking countertop doing kung fu noises and steaming just collard greens. He's
What?
he's just steaming collard greens.
That's it?
That's it. You get collard greens and a whole potato. It's a whole one, just steamed, not cut, nothing.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is dinner, and this is this.
We had that and falafels. We were making it by.
We were getting by, but the herbal teas was holding it down. But also just wasn't eating a lot.
Yeah.
I would have me one meal, two meals a day
You
tops.
kind of just accidentally found yourself living this yogi lifestyle of fasting.
Yeah, I was kind of intimate fasting. Part of it was intentional because we knew we shouldn't eat as much and we should start to eat a little bit less and see what that feels like. Part of it's also we didn't know how to cook great meals
Yeah, yeah.
yet. Um, yeah, so that was the 2021.
So through this period, what made you decide I should look into teaching yoga and like that could be a career path?
Yeah, looking for the next thing for myself. I wasn't sure what it was going to be yet. And I want something like kind of person where I want to lock into something for a long time. I really enjoy something that I can do for a long time and continue to get inspired, by it. So I was like, I don't know if this yoga thing is a thing. I don't know if this is even like a real job. Like, are people making money doing this thing? Can I do this? I was really unsure about it. I had no idea that a yoga teacher was a successful job. You know, there were no examples of this, anywhere that I knew of, except for the teachers who I took class from.
Hmm.
But I wasn't sure, you know. So I would ask after class, like, hey, is this all you do? You do it part-time, you do it full-time?
Did you look up to any of those instructors as like setting an example for the way you'd like to end up teaching?
No.
It was more just like a pragmatic, this seems like a good job.
Yeah. I was like, this looks fun. I like being here. Um, Everyone else is enjoying being here. These classes are packed. Sun's working, I keep coming back. Everyone else keeps coming back. This could be a cool thing. I wonder if this is a job or not. If this is lucrative enough to be a full-time job. Or do they have second jobs? So I would ask them, and most people say, yeah, they have another job. Um, Others said they teach full time. But the way YTTP Yoga to the People did their business structure, and their scheduling, they never put a teacher's name on the schedule. So you didn't know whose class you were taking when you would go.
Hmm.
You would just take class,
Yeah.
and it did it this way intentionally so you don't, gravitate to a certain teacher. It has its benefits and it has its cons. It's not the best idea, but you know, it worked for the business. They didn't pay teachers much money. I found out about this after I got certified with it.
So you took the training with,
I ended up doing a hot yoga training with them. And that was my first training. I think that was 2015.
and you got a scholarship?
No, this one I paid actually. This one I paid. That was 1,800. So that was affordable.
That
That
was
wasn't
a big investment at the time, I
at the
imagine.
time it was still a big investment. My father actually helped pay for that. If not
Did you have to
half.
pitch him on that? How'd that go?
I said, hey, I'm not going to college. I'm not interested. I never was. They knew this. I never was. I always was very adamant about not going to college, pretty much my entire life. Um, and I said this thing I want to do after get certification. I started to teach and work, and yeah, he did it. He went in and he helped. I think he, if not paid for half of it, three-quarters of it, something like this. And that was my first yoga training, 2015, hot yoga, yoga to the people. Um, yeah, I at the training ran on weekends. I think Friday, Saturday, Sunday, about 6 to 8 weeks. Um, yeah, that's how that went. And it was, training was good. Training was good. I learned a lot, you know. Yeah, I just
Doesn't sound like it was super transformative.
it wasn't super transformative. I mean, I was already in it, like I was practicing hot yoga a lot before. You know, I was already in it, so being in the training kind of just like gave me more opportunity to practice, and the teaching element I thought was fun. I was nervous as well because I had to memorize a sequence, a structure, and I wanted to do that to the T.
I imagine coming from dance, that was relatively
Yeah,
simple
dance,
task for
theater,
you.
yeah, have memorized a script basically. I was like, yeah, I can do this. I'm familiar with this type of
Did
work.
you delve much deeper into the philosophical side of things,
At
or
that
is it still primarily asana
at that
focused?
time, yoga. Well, I was a very, at that time, I was interested in all philosophies at that time. So I would debate anybody. I would debate the Black Israelites on the street about stuff when they would post up and speak. I would debate Muslims on the street, Christians on the street. I would debate everybody. Who else was there that I used to talk to a lot? The Hare Krishnas. They play the music, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Rama. So I would debate them too. I would talk to anybody who I felt was interested in God and philosophy and spirituality. I would talk with them about
That's not
what
something
they
you
believed in.
grew up with, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I got it from my dad. My dad is this kind of person, and him and I would have conversations about politics and about the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's about it. And we still do have very, our conversations have gone even deeper now. But yes, it was a little bit that rebellious militants kind of energy came. I would say he also had a huge influence in me in that way. Because he was that person, he was that kind of guy. Um, yeah. So I would just talk to these people, Masons. I would talk to them. I would talk to anybody who I felt was a part of some sort of like brotherhood, fraternities, group, society, religion, whatever you were a part of. I wanted to talk to you and hear about your philosophy and what you thought life was about, and then challenge it. That's what I want to do. To try and see if there's truth in it or not. You know,
So,
um,
how did the science of yoga fit into all this
I
new
mean,
discovery?
for me, I think the first yoga book I started to read. Well, the closest thing I got, see, they they prescribed, or they told us to read a number of yoga books. I believe, I don't remember. I didn't read any of them in my first like two trainings. I didn't read any of the books they asked us to read
Why?
because I didn't believe that I didn't believe they read the books. So I said, I'm not reading these books. You didn't read these books.
You knew.
I said, you didn't read these books.
Okay.
I'm not reading these books. And I said, what you really want me to do is teach this sequence. That's what you're asking of me, really, is to
Is it a
deliver
set
these
sequence?
sequences. It was a set thing, you know. And my primary concern was teaching the next class, you know. So I put my energy into this and into making sure I knew the sequence, I was comfortable, and that I could also practice it well. I was interested in the physical spiritual culture of yoga a lot, and still am. But at that time, so the benefits of asana was like really intriguing to me.
How was that? How did that feel different than your previous forms of movement?
The emphasis wasn't on healing, you know. With dance, it's about performance, and a good show. There's some cultural context there with African dance and certain modern dances. There's cultural context there, but the emphasis wasn't on healing, you know. I experienced healing through dance at church, praise dancing. We experienced that there. So that was the closest I got to like a spiritual, physical kind of thing, was in praise dancing, African dancing. Um, but with yoga, it was different. This is about this is therapy and movement. You know, that was a brand new concept for me. I was like, oh, movement can be therapeutic. I never thought about it that way. But as I reflected on dance, I always knew that dance was my therapy. I always knew that. I always knew dance was a safe haven for me. And it was a place where I can go to and release my demons, let go of what I didn't want. So I love dance for that. Um, but yoga was different because it was clear that this is what it is, and we're dissecting this understanding, and I was like, oh, this is cool. So I got really interested in the benefits of asana. And also it was apparent. You take a class, you feel different. You feel it, so you couldn't, it was in your face. So reading books or reading philosophies were less tangible for me. The most tangible thing was taking the class and then feeling the effects that the class had on my body and mind. Then after that, it was the foods and changing my diet. These were very gross physical things, that I could like.
Through all the philosophical understanding or downloading, um, what do you think centered health at the top of this, I don't know, value system you were developing?
I'm trying to understand why health became so important to me and not other things. And I don't know if it's because where it is. I admired healthy looking people. That's what it was too. I was like, you can't be in a physical practice and not look good. You can't be teaching yoga or teaching nutrition or teaching dance and not look it. People want to also know that what you're doing works because they see it in you, so you have to be an example. But there was also something else too. You know what it was? I realized that your brain is one of the most important things. And if you can feed your brain what it needs, you can feed the body what it really needs, you will think and feel better. And this will give you growth. This will give you energy to, that's what it was too. I wanted more energy. I was interested in working harder and more efficiently. I wanted to be able to work longer, harder, more efficiently. Um, and I knew food was a huge part of that. So I knew if I could get a better understanding of what my body needed, I can get more energy into my system. I can pump out more content. I can read more books.
So there's like there's an urge to create
Urge to,
from this inspiration with all these people that you're discovering, these new ideologies.
yeah, I wanted to read more books. I wanted to write more. I wanted to learn more. So I said, okay, I need to supply my body with the proper nutrients.
So like health became a way for you to unleash your full
Energy.
potential.
Exactly. That's really what it's about. Eating healthier is unlocking latent energy within you. It's going to free you up and you can become a propeller to shoot you forward. So that's really what I think nutrition is about. You don't live to eat, you eat to live, so that's like the understanding that was coming in, you know.
Such a common saying for the saying for work.
Yeah. Right, right. And that's kind of what it was. And I was like, okay, that's important. And I also was really into longevity, into like cracking the aging dilemma, and people getting sick earlier, the life expectancy. I felt that was incorrect. I think we should live a little bit longer than what it's, we've been. I don't, so I think a lot of it had to do with the foods. I think we could live longer, get an extra 10 years, extra 15 years on your life if you took better care of yourself,
Absolutely.
and I think you can have a second shot at life. You said you got married, you had the kids, they go to college, the whole thing. Now you're in your 50s. Now you're in your 60s or whatever. And now your time. But you can't because you aren't as healthy. You aren't as mobile. You aren't as energized. You aren't as alert and clear. So I wanted to change that, you know. I want to change that.
Tying things back to where you are now as a teacher, teaching full time, how does all of that play into your current mindset as a teacher?
Um, well, I've um I've eased up and I've changed a lot. So, I'm not, I used to be a little bit more militant in the way I taught, but I'm not that way anymore. I've grown past that understanding in teaching. And, but now, you know, I always emphasize healing in my classes. My classes is really a chance for you to come in and work through some physical challenges that are preventing you from feeling your best. And then my class is also an opportunity for you to unlock the understanding of the importance of breathing, and that being like yoga is so great because yoga inspires every person to take charge of their own health. Like you don't even need to eat foods that are like super healthy. Let's say you don't have access to any of that stuff. It's okay. You can actually change your whole physiology through your practices, through your breath, through your mentality, through your pranayama techniques, So there's all these energy expanding exercises that come from yoga. And that's what to me is like the metaphysical culture of yoga is so cool to me. So that's my draw. Like that's what keeps me coming back is I believe in all of the you know, revolutionary change, all the transmutation, all the alchemic changes that happen from yoga. I believe in all these things. So I think, that happens when you practice asana correctly, consistently, when you breathe correctly, consistently, when you think positively, and calmly, and yoga practice helps support your positive mentality. When you practice your yoga, you tend to have better thoughts.
Yeah,
Or or not
absolutely.
even say you're gonna have, pastels and lavender and pastel green thoughts all the time, but even if a challenging thought comes up, the way you dissect it is differently. You know, it's not a reaction. You respond, take time. The way you approach, thinking is different, which is what I really love about yoga. And that's all the cool stuff for me. Is how it affects the psychology and how the psychology informs the physiology. And then the practice is shifting that psychology, shifting the physiology, is working on both levels at the same time. So at this point, health is the center of my class. I may not be telling you. Sometimes I speak about herbs. I'll speak about good water. I speak about the importance of not eating too much too soon or not eating too much too late. You know, very baseline health principles I'll speak about, but I try to really emphasize it in just a yogic context.
How does that play into the way you like to sequence?
Yeah, so you try and think about how each pose has a different effect on the body and how we want to, what's the desired result here, and how can we create that result with these asanas. So we look into the different characteristics of certain types of poses. We look into how does a back bend make you feel? How does a forward fold make you feel? How does a hip opener make you feel? How does a spinal twist make you feel? So you have to experiment. You gotta practice for some time, and then you will recognize this. And when I do a bunch of back bends, I'm a little wired. You
Right?
know, I'm a little like, wow, okay.
Yeah, backbends are
I feel like a
crazy.
little energy surge from a back bend. When I do forward folds, I'm kind of relaxed. I'm calm, my energy levels is like, I'm like, whew, that felt good. That's kind of energy I got from forward fold. So, okay, cool. That helps inform us now on how we want to put things together. Then you have to study anatomy a bit and physiology, understand what's happening anatomically to the body when you do these asanas. What muscles are we stretching?
Did you already have a good understanding of this coming from dance?
I mean, I had a bodily intelligence from dance and a good awareness of myself from dance, but I didn't have the actual science. I didn't have anatomy or physiology. I didn't have those sciences, but I knew I knew my body, and I was so my awareness of myself in movement was developed, so when I would do something, I can feel everything. So I'm like, oh, did you feel that little subtle sense? Did you feel that little thing? Oh, word. Okay, cool. I'm taking mental notes every time I do a pose, and I'm starting to, build a little understanding on how these poses affect me. Um, and I had good teachers who had good cues, and those cues help teach me too. So that helped. Um, But yeah, and the more I studied like meridians, that helped to how these poses affect you emotionally. How that changes the energy too. Um, and also looking into the lineages of yoga and how they sequenced, and how they would speak about certain segments of the class. So the closing sequence in Ashtanga, they always emphasize it being the more meditative poses, headstands, and when you look at when you go back in yogic texts, these are some of the oldest poses, and they always say that you really only need to do two or three poses anyway. And headstand is kind of one of them. Savasana is also one of them. Full lotus is one of them. So and all these poses come at the end of the Ashtanga sequence. So I'm like, okay, that's another piece of information I can pull from. Yeah, so
This is all research you decided to do on your own.
yeah, it's just, stuff. I'm home smoking a joint at night, drinking tea, watch a documentary on it, watch an old sequence on it, read a book on it, or also just being aware and present during class and just listening to what the teacher's saying and be like, well, okay, do this, do that. Seeing how that makes me feel when I listen to the cues.
Have you ever practiced yoga outside of New York City?
Yeah, I practiced upstate, Florida, Austin, Texas.
And how did that contrast what you learned here, or was it pretty much the same?
Well, upstate is an extension of the New York City crew anyway, so that was kind of the same. Florida had some overlap. There were friends I knew from New York who were flying down to Florida and Miami. A friend of ours had a studio down there. So I went down there and took class. And I only took class with people who I knew were cut from the same cloth of yoga as me, you know. So I was very particular with who I took yoga with anyway. So even when I traveled, I always try and look for people who are part of the nucleus, or who are close enough to it. So even when I travel to Florida, even when I travel to Austin, Texas, and I taught at Bikram Studio down there. I met people who knew my teachers
Mm.
and who were influenced by them, and taught in a similar way. Woman named Gianna, who I really like, who's her own thing. Um, Great teacher. I really like what she does. She's really clear cues, knows the body, knows the practice really well. Has done it herself. Has put herself through it time and time again, and has only grown over the years. And she's very successful now. She's somebody who was like different, had her own teachers, her own influence, who I admired, and who were friends with some of my teachers, but had her own thing going on. And that was at the same level. She's Gianna. She's dope. Um, but there was some other cats who flew in, like I named Gokula. He came in, he's like alien level yoga. He's like crazy. He's like might as well be in the cosmos the way he practices. He's a wild guy. He's a wild dude. Him. Um, yeah. Yeah, not too many. I mean, now I'm really into Eddie Stern now. Eddie Stern is like a person who I really like to take class with and talk to after class. And he's right under Patabi Joyce, who started Ashtanga Yoga. So he's in the original videos from Yoga Works on YouTube practicing with Patabi Joyce. He's in those famous videos. Um, yeah,
Yeah. They're pretty strongly influenced by the New York scene here.
yeah. The New York scene really, like, actual physical teachers here. I mean, my philosophy, the books I started to read are, just books that anyone can get anywhere. But the teachers were New York based teachers.
So
Um,
how do you feel now as kind of one of those pillars in the yoga teacher scene here?
I'm looking for a new teacher. I'm craving to get by Eddie Stern as much as I can. I really want to get next to him more frequently. I really want to, shadow him, and because that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a new teacher for myself, you know. So yeah,
Last five, I
yeah.
guess, anything like you want to impart to either your students or teachers you have, or just anyone who could potentially take your class, maybe? Anyone who's found themselves on the yoga journey, like unsure of what's how they should explore it further.
Well, I'm thankful to my teachers, for showing me the way and opening up the doors for me. And I'm thankful to my peers who I practice with to push me and we grow together. It's great to have that spiritual family. And I'm thankful to my students for holding me up, and making me show up, for myself and for them and continue to push this thing forward. For those who are coming into yoga now and maybe a little bit unsure whether they should continue to practice or have moments of doubt, I always say return to your mat, return to your, whenever you think you shouldn't do it, and then let that tell you, how let that feeling, tell you what's really going on. If you're having doubts, you're probably not doing enough yoga. That's probably what it is.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for
Yeah, man. Thank
joining us
you.
today.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe we'll have you on again sometime. I feel like we barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, you be jumping around and stuff. Yeah, yeah. This is cool. Thanks, man. Thanks for trying to do this. Bring all this equipment back.
See y'all in the next one.
All right. Peace.